Welcome to Faith and Calm. This is class number 232. 32. Next week is 233. We're not ready for Hanukkah yet, but we're in exciting parts in the Torah. That's for sure. This last week we learned about the birth of Yaakov and Esav. This year we're going. This week we're already into his wedding. Got married 4 times at the same time, not successively, but I'm usually about a week behind. So we're going to learn something very interesting about, and it's important also for our lives, from the story of Rivka giving birth to Yaakov and Esav. And as you probably know, the first thing that happens is she's praying. She's praying for 10 years to have a child, and there's no child. And there's no child for 10 years. And they pray for 10 years. And then finally, after 20 years, she's remembered. And so this should be a very happy moment. But the first thing we hear about Rivka is, Lama Zadnochi. Why is this happening to me? I am beginning to regret the whole thing that I wanted to get pregnant and have children. That's what it sounds like, at least. And then we learned the inside story that there were these 2 babies that were struggling inside of her, but she didn't know that. They didn't have ultrasound in those days. She thought there was one child, and she was very disturbed about this child. So she goes to find out what is happening to her, because this is an unusual pregnancy. Whenever she goes by houses of Torah learning, the one child tries to go out, and when she goes by houses of ashrams and avodah zorah, then the other child tends to go. And this was very disturbing. What was happening with this child inside of her. So she goes to Shem. She hears directly from God what the story was, and that is that there's 2 children inside of you, and they're going to be 2 separate nations, and one nation will struggle against the other continuously. When one rises, the other one will rise up against them to overpower him, and they'll just be constantly locked in a struggle. And this calmed her down. So the Rebbe says, doesn't sound like it's calm. Why before she was so perturbed? She was wondering, why am I? Not lam, why is this happening to me? But if the actual Hebrew is lam anochi, who am I and what am I? Which are very deep philosophical questions. And this was really being brought out by the 2 children inside of her. But she's nevertheless, she's somehow calmed by the fact that there's 2 of them. There's 2 of them, it's not one. So there was a rabbi, Rabbi Shlomo Rabinowitz, the Rav of Radomsk, wrote a book called The Tiferes Shlomo, and he says that it was disturbing to her to begin with, because she felt that there was one child, and a child that has a particular
leaning.
The leaning. What is it called? Anyway, Hanhaga? No, not Hanhaga. I know what Hanhaga is. Okay. One particular way that he's going, and he doesn't make up his mind. He goes one way, the other way, this way or that way. That's going to be a very difficult child to raise, that he's very confused. So when she heard there's 2, that was comforting, because it just means that each one has their own particular path. But there's more to it than that. And that's what the Alter Rebbe says, because the story is at the beginning of the history of the Jewish people and happens to the Avos, so it must be relevant to us. It must be a lesson to us for every generation. So what is the lesson here? What are we being taught? So if you look in the Tanya, here we see the following. It says that there are 2 souls in a person. One of the souls is focused on physical, materialistic survival and in your basic physical existence. That's called the Nefesh Bahamis, the animal soul, which is not bad. And it's just involved in protecting the animal level of the human being, which is he needs to eat, needs to sleep, needs to have a warm place to stay, needs a certain kind of sort of friendship, things that are related to just basic physical existence and taking care of yourself. It's a complicated job. There are 70 trillion cells in a person, and they all, it's a lot of coordination to keep everything all in synchronization. Now, we may not do this conscientiously, but the Nefesh Bahamis is involved in every single one of them. So if you have 5 things that you're doing, trying to get done today, I mean, here's got 70 trillion things that it has to keep track of. So it's a big job. And then there's the godly soul, which is involved in what is my mission? What is my purpose? What am I doing here? Who am I? What am I? Philosophical questions about the nature and the goal of what this existence is, because the existence itself is just existing. But what is it all about? What is it? Its purpose is about serving Hashem. But that's the godly soul. So it's the Alter Rebbe explains that he says these two nations, and that's what he's saying too, that they'll be constantly struggling. They are constantly at war with each other, meaning that they don't they don't give in to each other. They have different vectors and interests, and one wants to control the body 100%. In the language of the Tanya, it says one wants to conquer the city entirely, and the other one is like another king that wants to conquer the city entirely. And it's just like a lady in the kitchen, There can only be one cook in the kitchen. I need to have complete control. So then, and Nefesh Bahamis is saying, I need complete control. And the godly soul is saying, I need complete control. And this is a prescription for struggle and conflict. And that is normal. What is the Alter Rebbe saying in practical terms to us? In practical terms, this is the following. Sometimes we might just finish davening and had a very inspiring situation where we did something very good. And then the next minute, life can hijack you and take you into a very different situation. And that can be very disturbing. Was my prayer worth anything? Are my good thoughts worth anything? Because I see that, I can be just as much 180 degrees going in a different path, in a different diametric path. And all of a sudden, and I didn't think I was supposed to go this way at all. Rabbi YY, who I'm taking part of this talk from, he says that he gets a lot of email from women. And sometimes they're very disturbed because they thought that they were on a very holy level. They were great tzaddikim. And all of a sudden, they find that they're having very immature thoughts, very angry thoughts, and they're thinking, maybe I'm just a phony. I'm having immortal thoughts. So what am I good or am I bad? And that, for a sincere person and an honest person, that can be very disturbing. You can't just dismiss it because it seems like I'm really not that kind of person I thought I was. And that can be very disturbing. And so this lesson that we're getting from the Parsha is that, it's not one person. You actually have different voices inside of yourself. And those voices can be very strong. It's like the voices in the peanut gallery. They can be saying, take a left, do this, turn, backseat driver, go this way, go that way. So these voices are always there. And that's what God was saying to Rivka. Says, you know what? You're going to have different voices in you. And they're going to, maybe not even 2, maybe 3, maybe 4. And they're all going to have very strong opinions. And you're not crazy. You're not crazy, and you're not sick, and you're not bad. Or as there was a radio commentator, what was his name? I forget his name anyway, who used to call people on the radio. He called them they were phony and frank and phony, fake, and what's the third F? Fraud. Thank you. Frauds. These people are frauds, fakes, and phonies. I think he's talking about politicians. So you're not, because You are supposed to have these struggles, and through these struggles, that's how you bring Mashiach. It would be a mistake to think that somehow there's not that you're, that we're born on this purely holy path, because almost no one in this world is. We are born to have these struggles and to have these two different voices in us, in ourselves. It doesn't mean that we are fake or frauds. So, where am I going with this? So that's what Rivka was being told, is that you do have these two different voices, and that doesn't mean that you're bad. It doesn't mean that you're a fake. It means that you know that you're a human being, and it would be a mistake to actually try and fight against and to try and deny that you have an animal soul or just animal material desires. Because what happens when they do that is it just begins to think that you can't be trusted. Let me give you an example of this. This comes actually from Rabbi YY's wife. She says, when a person, this animal soul, it develops a certain kind of operating system, a certain kind of way of looking at the world. And it doesn't necessarily here, and it exists in the body actually until your bat mitzvah or bar mitzvah. It's the only one there. So it's sort of like, it has full reign over the person, and it doesn't know that there's a godly soul. And therefore, it just starts making up a model, not only of how to take care of the body, but also of what the purpose of life is and what we're supposed to be doing. And that can be dangerous, because that's really not its role. Its role, when it takes over and it runs everything, it can really mess up the whole person, because it says there's nothing other than taking care of materialistic paths. There is no such thing about godliness. There is no higher purpose. And therefore, my whole mission is just taking care of number one, or like, I'm going to use an example I just went through. So my car broke down before Rosh Hashanah, so I had to go through the wonderful experience of finding a new car. And just today, I finished the negotiations with the car dealers. And I'm glad I'm not a car dealer. I mean, everything is just like, everything is a game, a racket, trying to squeeze more money this way, that way, and so forth. And it's like, oh, it's so difficult and painful to have to go through and so forth. And you don't really feel very good afterwards. Maybe some people do. I don't feel very good about it. So, when the animal soul starts thinking about itself and starts making that the agenda, everything is about, the car and the material pleasures and so forth. It's just a very difficult kind of world, because there's no higher purpose other than that. So his wife gave an example and said it's sort of like a little kid, and the parents aren't home. And then the kids just sort of make up what, life is about. And they can be, very frightened and very scared and very anxious and very worried because it doesn't really, everything seems like a threat to one's physical existence. It doesn't have trust in Hashem. It doesn't have belief in Hashem. It just believes in itself and about protecting number one. So people who live on that level of just the animal soul, they're they may be very perfectionist. They may be trying to be always organized, because there's always scared about having to take care of themselves. So it's like that little kid, who the parents aren't around, so they start eating pizza and popcorn, and they don't know what they're supposed to be doing, and then because it's the animal soul develops a theory of what life is all about by itself. It's the job of the godly soul to come into the bodily soul, and it doesn't invest directly. It has to go through the animal soul and to speak to it and to teach it that there's something bigger than what it is. And you know what? It actually feels just like the children. When the parents are home, it feels protected and safe. And it says, oh, good, I don't have to worry about that stuff. I can just do what I'm supposed to do, which is making sure that I eat properly 3 times a day, that I go to the bathroom, and then I brush my teeth, and I take care of my physical needs. That's the role of the animal soul. It's a nice role. It takes care of things the godly soul doesn't want to do. But when it takes over the rest of ourselves, that's when we get all this anxiety and worry and fear, and we can't trust anything and so forth, because we're listening only to the animal soul. And that's the struggle of a person. So, and it can come out in many different ways. I mean, when the child is young, maybe, the person was, somebody criticized the way that they kept their room. And then for the rest of their life, they're always scared when somebody's coming over. My house has to be 100% immaculate. Otherwise, somebody else is going to yell at me. And it's just it's an automatic reaction of something that's in the animal soul or in the body that just automatically reacts to certain situations and says, this is a fearful, anxiety ridden place. Maybe public speaking or going out to public gatherings is something scary because you think that, you're going to be exposed as a fake, fraud, and phony. Fake, fraud, and phony. Yep. Okay. Yeah, fake, fraud, and phony. The 3 F's and so forth. So you just, you're full of anxiety in those situations. Everybody has different places which triggers them and makes them feel worried. And being aware of these things is the first step in trying to be able to speak to that animal soul, saying, you know what, you don't have to worry. You just take care of what you're supposed to take care of. Make sure I don't overeat. Make sure I eat only when I'm hungry. Make sure I only I take care. I get enough about sleep. Make sure I go to bed and so forth like that. That's all you have to do. The rest of the things about what's going to happen with you and so forth, the godly soul sees godliness and it sees the holiness and it sees the opportunity. And therefore, it's never really afraid because it's connected to God and it never really has to worry. It just says, oh, that's an interesting opportunity to serve God in a new situation. So this is really the lesson that we're getting from this week's parsha is how to talk to and how to deal with one's animal nature and to notice it when it's in charge and to say, you know what? I don't want you in charge because you're overstepping your bounds and you're driving me crazy because you're bringing in all sorts of scary situations that really are not your business to worry about. You're just supposed to take care of my physical needs, not trying to take care of the whole world. Let the godly soul take care of it. The godly soul has to be that for that to happen. The godly soul has to not try and overpower the animal soul, because then it'll be scared and say, oh, you're just another one who's against me. And so it will react negatively. But rather say, you know what? I understand you. I care for you. I understand where you're going. I have to work with you and so forth. My godly soul invests in the body through the animal soul. So let's work together to bring something out. And when you speak to it that way and you begin to understand what its fears are and where it's coming from, then you can have a much better life. And that, I think, in the end is what, Rivka was comforted with, was realizing, that existence has these two different trends in it. And you have to know that the animal soul is at war, and it will continue to be at war, just like Hezbollah will continue to be at war until the end of time, because anything that any kind of compromise it makes with Israel is only to recharge their batteries to fight again. And they're not fans of Israel, and they know what they want to do. And so to the animal soul, it will continue to bring up all these kind of fears and worries. But nevertheless, you know what? If you talk to it and you can, it's part of you. You can actually then start to bring it over into realizing that it has to have its boundaries, it has to have its place where to take care of. But you know what? The rest of the stuff I'm taking care of. Okay, that's the. My wife will give you something much more tangible. She's got a great story. I listened to it at dinner, and I was blown away. So stay tuned. Don't everybody leave. And I wish you a good week.
Thank you, Yeskel Shimon. Thank you.
Okay.
Moshe Hudis, nice to see you.
Nice to see you too. So, does anybody want to say anything before I begin?
No.
Happy Kislev. Today was the first of Kislev. Yeah. And today was the day that in 1977, 1977, the Rebbe was 75 years old, and he had a shocking, massive heart attack on Simchas Torah of that year, and anyway, I probably told the story before, so I'm just going to just allude to it very briefly that. He had a massive heart attack. It's not funny, but it's just amazing how all the Jews reacted it was on Simchas Torah during Hakafos, and he turned white and he excused himself and he sat down in his chair. And everybody said, something's wrong with the Rebbe. The Rebbe needs air. And they immediately broke all the windows. They smashed all the windows in 770 so that the Rebbe could get air. And they told and everybody said, clear out, the Rebbe needs air. And all the Hasidim went into the street. They were crying, praying. And the Rebbe kept saying, I'm fine, I'm fine. He actually took himself to the sukkah because, he hadn't had the Yontif meal. He made Kiddush. He had a small meal. And then he went to his office and he told the Hasidim to keep dancing. Meanwhile, the truth was he had had an absolutely massive heart attack. And yet he pushed himself to he didn't have a Suda yet. He didn't make Kiddush yet. It's amazing, the Rebbe's fortitude. He was 75. And anyway, he went to his office and people tried to come in and he said no. And then finally somebody said, you have to talk to us, Rebbe. Something's wrong with you. And he let them in. He let some people in and they got some local doctors and they determined that the Rebbe had had a massive heart attack. And I'm just going to tell it until my favorite point. My favorite point is that, they told the Rebbe, you have to go to the hospital or you're going to die because you need fancy equipment. You can't stay here. And they said, we can see from the little that we know, we can see that you had a massive heart attack and we can see that an even more massive one is on the way. And you're not going to make it here. You have to go to the hospital. And the Rebbe said, I do not have to go to the hospital. I am staying here in 770. This is the place I need to be. And that's it. There's no discussion. And they all tried to argue with him. And then they said, okay, Rebbe, okay, we're not going to take you to the hospital, but at least let us put you to sleep. And because if you're asleep, you'll be able to weather the second heart attack, which is going to be a bigger one. You'll be able to weather it better. And the Rebbe said, no, you don't have permission because you're going to put me to sleep and then you're going to take me to the hospital when I'm sleeping. And he made them promise. They promised that they wouldn't take him to the hospital. So he allowed them to give him the shot that would put him to sleep. Meanwhile, the Rebbitzin was notified and she ran to 770. And as soon as she got to 770, the doctors who were there, they were calling doctors from a doctor flew, like to save a life, you can do anything. A doctor from, who was it? The famous heart doctor, he has his own center, Lan, I can't remember what it is. But anyway, he flew in and a doctor from Chicago flew in the middle of Yontif, and they got tickets, flew, everything, the whole 9 yards. And anyway, so the Rebbitzin comes in and they tell the Rebbitzin, listen, Rebbitzin, your husband is in terror, he weathered a horrible heart attack and there's gonna be an even more massive one coming. He told us that he doesn't want to go to the hospital, but without going to the hospital, the chances of surviving are very bad. And so he's sleeping now. If you tell us we can take him to the hospital, we're going to listen to you and we're not going to listen to him. And she said, she didn't have to think. She said, in my 50 years of being married to this man, I've never made him upset. And what's more, he was the Rebbe, and she listened to him like a Rebbe. She was also a chassid, and she said, I'm not going against what he said, and that's it. You don't have to ask me again. And I thought that was amazing. Just like, this woman is about to give up. They're telling her she's going to lose everything that she has because she had no publishing, no life other than the Rebbe. And yet her respect for her husband was so intense and so complete. And it was really a shocking comment. In 50 years, she's never made her husband upset. It's an incredible thing. Anyway, to make a long story short, the Hasidim, when they heard that the Rebbe was having heart attacks, and they heard that the Rebbe didn't want to go to the hospital, and they heard that the Rebbe wanted to be set up here in 770, make him a bed, and etc. And they knew that he needed all sorts of equipment. The Hasidim ran to their houses and ran back on Yontif with bags of money to buy equipment for the Rebbe. Here, take this, take this. And if you can just picture it, a frum Jew doesn't touch money, right? A Jew doesn't do anything like that on Yontif. But because on Yontif, to save a life, it's all allowed. Anyway, the Rebbe recovered, and on this day, the first day of Kislev, he returned to a normal life, and he was able to. He had been staying day and night in 770, and he was able to go home and start living a normal life again. So it's quite a remarkable day today. Anyway, um, anyway, the four things that I usually say are: number one, we're living in an extraordinary time. I learn the sichas of the Rebbe every day, and the Rebbe told us many times that we're already in the days of Mashiach. We're already in Yemos Mashiach. And the Rebbe said it on the 20th of Kislev. That one I quote many times. But the Rebbe also said it even earlier in Chukas, 1991. That's summertime, I believe, Chukas. And he said, we are standing already in the days of Mashiach. It's an incredible statement. We're already in the days of Mashiach, not in the middle, only in the beginning. And may we immediately merit the true and complete redemption. So there's a lot of halachic significance of being already in Yemos Mashiach, in the days of Mashiach. Anyway, so the Rebbe tells us the word the days of Mashiach. He also hinted broadly many times that he himself is Mashiach. He never said, I'm Mashiach. Why not? If he's Mashiach, why wouldn't he say, I am Mashiach? Because Mashiach is not Mashiach until the people choose him. A king in Jewish law, a Jewish king cannot become, he cannot take the crown. He's not king, he's not fully king until the people have to want him. It's a symbiotic relationship. He can't appoint himself over them. And so anyway, the second thing is our souls were handpicked to be in this generation because we have a vital role to play. Number three, we have all the tools we need. We have the mitzvahs, which are our power tools, and we have the Torah, which is our guidebook. And lastly, by learning about redemption, which we're doing tonight, we actively advance it. The Rebbe said there's nothing that speeds up the redemption faster than learning about it. So the title of this class today was When Life is Perilous, Just Keep It Simple. So I was, this is also very close to the anniversary. We had the horrible story about oh my gosh, his name is slipping my memory right now, but we know about the shaliach, the Chabad rabbi who was killed in the Arab Emirates. He was a Chabad rabbi doing his job, and he was hunted down by Hamas, whatever, terrorists, and his body was found 4 days later, and it happens to be an anniversary, as you probably all know. It's almost virtually an anniversary of 2008, which was 2008 was 16 years ago. And this time of year, exactly this time of year, that's when the Holzbergs, the Chabad emissaries in Dubai, that's when they were murdered. And so anyway, there's an incredible coincidence between the two of them. The wife of the one who was just murdered happens to be the niece of Gavriel Holzberger, who was the Chabad Shaliach, who was murdered I believe she's the niece, was murdered in 2008. And let me just get my water. So it's just an incredible thing. So I was looking more into the Holzberg story, the couple who, if you remember, a Muslim terrorist broke into the Chabad house, killed a lot of people, and he kept the rabbi and his rebbitzin hostage for 4 days. Not hostage. He knew he was going to kill them. They knew he was going to kill them. And for 4 days, I don't know what they were doing. And maybe they're trying to negotiate for their lives. Maybe they were teaching him the Sheva Mitzvahs B'nai Noach. It took 4 days. But eventually, I guess they must have decided at least kill her first, and so she doesn't have to see. Also, probably the husband didn't want her to be alone with this guy. She was killed first, and then he killed him, and the little boy escaped with his nanny. What I when I was reading the story this now, I found out so many things I didn't know before. Number one, the Holzbergs. It's just an incredible story. This is not the first tragedy that they went through. They had a baby before the story happened. They had a child. Child died of Tay-Sachs. They had another baby. I don't know if this one was the second one or the first one. And that baby had Tay-Sachs, and it was so ill that it never made it home. It was in an institution. And that baby died 4 days after his parents were murdered. 4 days after his parents were murdered, he died in his hospital, where in his institution, wherever he was. Is that incredible? And the little boy who escaped, and she was 5 months pregnant when he murdered her. And so this kid who escaped, he was almost 2. So if you could imagine what he went through, both his parents were murdered, and his two siblings, 3 siblings. One sibling died very young. The other sibling died in whatever institution he was in, and then the wife was pregnant with it, 5 months pregnant. He's like a survivor of so much. It's incredible. So, and if you could see, okay. So, thank you. So, so anyway, and these people were angelic. The Holzbergs were absolutely angelic. Like many Chabad rabbis and rebbitzins, they poured all their. Thank you. I knew there was something for all the Chabad. Many Chabad rebbes and rebbitzins. Nobody gives them money to set up a Chabad house. They have to do it all on their own. And thank you. They have to do it all on their own, and it's very hard. And so very many of them, they live incredibly simply. And the Holzbergs were the same. If you saw pictures, they lived on they opened this place that would be a Chabad house, and they hosted people, and they had rooms for guests and stuff like that. Their own quarters, they had plastic furniture, just like we have friends and they're shluchim with many kids. When we stayed over their house one summer, their own personal house, the kids, they had plastic furniture. That's what they can afford. And yet they spend everything they can on their Chabad houses. So these people, Moshe and Rivka, they were just like, not Moshe, Gavriel and Rivka, they were just like that. So how can a person understand how one couple can go through so much? How can you understand that? How can you begin to understand Hashem's equations for things? If Hashem can do what he did to this couple, to a couple that's so holy, so pure, how can we even begin to ask Hashem, why are you doing this? How are you doing this? I don't get it. Of course we don't get it. We don't have anything, we have no idea of the scope that Hashem is operating on. It's ridiculous to question his ways. So I came to the conclusion that when your own life is going cuckoo, it's going haywire, instead of thinking into Hashem and thinking into what is he doing to me, and it's ridiculous, as I like to give the example, if there was an ant on the floor and the ant was saying, I know why Shalana Sudis is moving her foot. I know exactly why. It would be less ridiculous than me trying to figure out Hashem. So a more practical thing to do, the much more practical thing to do, is to stick to what you know. Be simple and stick to what you know works for you. If putting yourself to bed on time works for you, makes your day, that's what you should be doing. If being besimcha is what being happy makes your day. You should open your mouth wide and start laughing as hard as you can because it'll make you happy. Laughing makes people happy. Do everybody knows by the time you've reached a certain age, everybody knows what it is that fixes their own wagon. And you have to get busy just fixing your own wagon because to understand, to be able to judge Hashem, it's way out of our bailiwick. So anyway, I'm going to tell a little story since I told such depressing stuff now. I'm going to tell a very uplifting story about, yeah, Hashem really is in control. So I'm just going to get a bottle of water. 1 second. So anyway, many years ago, everybody's heard of Abraham Twersky, right? Abraham
Yes.
Twersky, Dr. Rabbi Abraham Twersky,
Yeah.
wrote many, 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 many wonderful books. Before he wrote any books, he was a rabbi and a psychiatrist, I guess, in Pittsburgh, and you know they were very observant, very Torah observant people, and they would have a lot of Shabbos guests. So, why would I say bracha? So at his Shabbos table, he would tell wonderful stories from his own life, from his own rich Hasidic history. And one time, a young man said to him, Rabbi Twersky, your stories are great, but I don't remember them when I leave here. Why don't you write them down and put them in a book? And Dr. Twersky looked at him and said, you know, I've been thinking about doing that for a long time. And I think you're suggesting it to me at this Shabbos table is the push I needed. I'm going to go do it. And he did it. And he wrote a book called Generation to Generation, one of the first from books, one of the first Torah observant books that were written, stories from his Hasidic background. Anyway, now the story goes to a young woman in LA. And I think, oh my gosh, I don't remember her name. I think her name was Marilyn. And she was a single Jewish woman, not Torah observant, in her 30s, divorced with a kid. And anyway, somebody gave her as a thank you for a favor she did. Somebody gave her this book by Rebbe Twersky, and she read it. She thought it was very, very interesting. She was really intrigued by it, and she thought, I wouldn't mind to learn more about my Judaism. And so she started taking classes. Eventually, she started keeping kashrus, and then after a while after that, she started keeping Shabbos. Anyway, so she became fully observant. She was a sports nutritionist, and they would fly her places to speak, and she flew I believe to Atlanta to give a speech, and she had to get home right after her speech. She had a connecting flight from Atlanta to Pittsburgh to LA where she lived with her kid, and there was something wrong when she was on the first flight. They were going to be delayed in their landing, and something like that. They were going to be delayed in their landing, and she thought, "Oh no, I have to make my next flight. I have to make it." Tonight is Yontif. It was a Wednesday night, and I think it was Shavuos that night. She said, I've got to make it home. My kid, her kid was probably staying with somebody else, obviously. But she said, he's going to summer camp for the first time in his life on Sunday. I have to be there to pack him off and send him off. It's the first time he's ever left home. And so she started davening but the delay got longer and longer and longer. By the time the plane landed in Pittsburgh, she ran for her plane for her connecting flight to LA, but she didn't make it. And she's stranded in Pittsburgh. And she doesn't have, this is in the 80s probably. She didn't have any, she had only a little bit of money with her. I don't know, did they have credit cards back then? Maybe. maybe not so, not in use like they are now, that's for sure. Cell phones, no, they didn't have anything like that until the 90s. So she didn't know what to do. She's I'm stranded in Pittsburgh. I don't know a soul here. And my kid. So she called the rabbi in LA, and he said, "Don't you worry about your kid. We're going to take care of him. We'll take care of finding somebody to pack him up and finding somebody to send him off to summer camp. Don't worry. We'll find him a ride. We'll do everything. But you have to find a place to stay. It's almost Yontif. That's your job." She gets off the phone and she doesn't know what. And the only thing she can think of is Twersky. Oh, I read a book and he's from Pittsburgh. Let me do something about it. By the way, I heard this story from Rabbi Zalman Taftel of University of Kansas, about the University of Kansas. So anyway, she so she okay, so she thinks I'm calling him. She said, I'm not even going to do that. I'm going to take a cab. He works at a hospital. He works at a hospital for a psychiatric hospital. I'm going to go there for people who are, he specialized in addicts.
Addiction.
Yeah, addiction. He specialized in addicts. So, so she takes a cab straight to the where he worked, runs in. His office is empty. Almost everybody's office is empty. It's the end of the day, and she doesn't know what to do. She finds somebody in the building. She says, "Give me his phone number. I have to call him." And the guy said, "I'm sorry, I can't give you his phone number. I'm not allowed to do that." She explained the whole situation to him, and she sounded very sincere. He said, "I'm not going to give you his phone number. I just can't. But I'm comfortable giving you his son's phone number. His son also works here. And I'm going to give you his number." She gave him the son's number. She called the son, and the son said, "Don't worry about it. I'm coming to pick you up. I'm going to arrange for you to stay somewhere near my father and near my parents' house. Don't worry about it." He did exactly that. He came to pick her up. He dropped her off at this neighbor's house. The neighbor was extremely welcoming, gave her food and right away and a nice cozy bedroom. And she talked to her son before it was Yontif, and she collapsed on the bed. And anyway, she collapsed on the bed. She has a wonderful Yontif night with that family, just wonderful. And the next day, she's scheduled to go to Dr. Twersky for lunch. And she goes to Dr. Twersky. And okay, I'm just trying to think if I need a throat candy also, because I have a temperamental voice. Just one second. Humor me. I'll be right back.
No problem.
Okay. Good. I have to preserve my teaching voice for tomorrow. So anyway, she goes to him for lunch. There's a few other people there. She has a great time, and there's a guy across the table from her, Steve, and Steve is a nice guy, Torah observant. He takes his Yiddishkeit seriously, takes his Torah seriously, and he happens to be very funny. And whenever he makes a joke, she laughs. And more, the jokes he seems to be directing his conversation to her, and she really likes this guy. Anyway, she likes him very much, and he offers to walk her back to where he's staying, and they have a wonderful time. She feels like she's known him her whole life. Anyway, the next day, she changes her lunch plans because she thinks she wants to go to where he's staying for lunch, and he changes his lunch plans because he wants to go where she's staying. Anyway, they miss each other, but they decide that they really like each other. He drives her to the airport to take her home, and they start dating. And in 5 weeks, they already know that they're meant for each other. They get married. They move to She moves to Pittsburgh with her kid, and they have 4 more children.
Wow.
And that's not the end of the story. The end of the story is that who was the one that persuaded Rabbi Twersky to write this book, to write his stories down, the stories that intrigued her so much that she started learning about Yiddishkeit? Steve.
This guy.
This guy.
Wow, that's crazy. Hashem was a great matchmaker.
Yeah.
That's so
Anyway.
cool.
So I'm going to wish everybody a good Shabbos. And a good Shabbos, a long time from Shabbos, a good Kislev. We should have a warm, 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 lichtige, light, full of light Kislev
Amen.
for everybody. And okay, good. And I'm going to turn off the recording if anybody has a question or